Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA Reddit malicious compliance stories. In this Ripestories video, imagine hosting a normal backyard pool party on your own property only for the HOA president to show up with security guards and fine you for running an illegal swimming business. Sounds insane, right? Well, she forgot one tiny detail. The road her entire neighborhood depended on was actually mine. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is from r/FHOA and it is titled, HOA is asking us to not be with our kids at the bus stop. And yep, you read that right, our neighborhood has a designated area where the bus picks the kids up at. And by the way guys, that original sentence absolutely fried my brain. That bus picks up the kids at? Anyway, some people park their cars down the street and wait for the bus, some people just let their kids stand there, and others stand there with their kids. The HOA sent a letter that no parents are to be waiting at the stop, no matter it be standing or parked. We don't want adults loitering at the bus stop. That is what they said. This is due to people complaining that it's uncomfortable having people outside their homes blocking their mailbox, and the residents have had trouble with some of the kids. They followed up with, "Our neighborhood is safe, you should feel safe leaving your kids at the bus stop." I decided to post a couple things that clarify some things, and the HOA was not too happy about it. So first, the stop is outside my house and I have not complained, and if I did, less supervision would mean more problems with the children. Second was clarifying exactly our neighborhood safety. Across the street was a 6-hour armed standoff that resulted in him only being under house arrest, so he is still around. We have 3 registered SEX offenders, and what is this? The HOA president himself was fired for allegations of 27 different crimes against minors, 3 of which were family members. I clarified it back in the 1990s and he never served time, but it's still ironic that he is telling us we should feel safe. I ended with the post on, if they push the issue, all parents are invited to my house during drop-off and pick-up times. This changes nothing about their behavior, but they are considered guests of the landowner. I got an email saying please take the post down from the HOA. I don't deal with the HOA, so I went petty and didn't respond and instead screenshotted it to the post. And by the way guys, I gotta say, that is one of the most WTF posts we have ever read so far. What the hell is wrong with that HOA president? Anyway, we will see if anything else happens. I'm really curious about how they think they will enforce the policy, especially being that none of the parents have altered their behavior on the bus stop. Update: after backlash and absolutely no one taking them seriously, the HOA replied in a letter saying, "Dear residents, we are writing to clarify a recent communication regarding street parking and bus stop etiquette. Our previous letter was intended as a friendly suggestion and not as a formal ruling or directive from the HOA. The purpose of our initial letter was to remind everyone to keep driveways clear and to maintain a socially acceptable distance from the bus stop. This helps ensure that all residents have easy access to their homes and that the children waiting for the bus have ample space without feeling crowded. We sincerely apologize if our previous message caused any confusion or concern. It was never our intention to imply that children should be left unattended at the bus stop. Also, it's a debate amongst me and a couple other neighbors. We think they used AI to write their letter. What do you guys think? Not that it matters, just kind of further teasing them." And yeah guys, I gotta say, that story is absolutely outrageous. I would definitely not feel safe letting my kids stand there alone, especially with the HOA having such a history. You know, at first I was thinking, oh, it's a typical case of like helicopter parents or something, but this neighborhood certainly doesn't sound safe. Let me know what you think in the comments. Comment number 1, my written response to them would be, is the HOA taking legal responsibility for the safety of my children? Please confirm in writing. And they will run for the hills. Comment number 2, some schools require an adult at the pickup and drop-off. Our school does until at least one kid from the home is over the age of 10. School is notified if a student is not accompanied, and it can and has led to CPS investigations. Want to be a real pain in their backside? Just reach out to CPS and let them know your HOA is trying to endanger children. Not sure who wins between them and the HOA, but I would bring some popcorn. And yeah guys, if you enjoy these crazy HOA stories, then please don't forget to like the video and post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. Also keep in mind, I am posting daily stories, so if you don't want to miss any of them, please subscribe to the channel as well, with the bell on. And the next one is the fantastic malicious compliance title story, which is titled, HOA fined me for my pool, so I banned them from using my service road. So, for some context, this happened a few years back in the Philippines. My family has owned this property for decades, way before any subdivision or HOA existed in the area. When developers started building in the neighborhood around us in the early 2010s, they made us an offer to buy our lot, but my parents refused to sell. So then, they just built around us, and we ended up being this weird standalone house right in the middle of what became the HOA subdivision, which I will call Douchebags United from here on out. The thing is, our property is pretty big compared to the lame little houses they built in the HOA. We've got about half an acre with this amazing pool that my dad built back in the day. It's a nice big-ish pool with some palm trees around it and a little outdoor kitchen area, so in short, it's perfect for the tropical climate. And trust me guys, if you've ever been in the Philippines, I can confirm the climate is indeed tropical as hell. The humidity there is just off the charts. Now anyway, here's the important part about our property layout. When the subdivision was being planned, the developers needed a service road along our property line to provide rear access for service vehicles. The subdivision has regular street access through the front gate, but this back route made it much more convenient for garbage trucks, maintenance crews and deliveries to reach about 60% of the houses without having to navigate the narrow residential streets inside the subdivision. Instead of going through expensive legal procedures to acquire the land, they just asked my parents if they could use the narrow strip along our property line as a service road, and my parents, being the nice people they are, said sure, no problem. So for years, this service road has been the main convenient route for garbage trucks to reach the house in the back, pool maintenance guys to bring their equipment in and out, and landscaping crews to haul their tools and delivery trucks to access the rear section without clogging up the narrow residential streets inside the subdivision. They could still use the front streets, but it meant tight turns, potential damage to landscaping, and a lot more time and hassle. I inherited the house when my parents moved back to Manila, and I've been living there for about 5 years. I work remotely for a tech company, so the quiet suburban life suits me perfectly. The pool became the center of my social life. I'd have friends over for barbecues, pool parties on weekends, nothing too crazy, just some good clean fun. Maybe 15 to 20 people max, always ending by 10 PM out of respect for the neighbors, and most of the neighbors were just cool with it. A few even became friends and joined our regular weekend hangouts, but there was always this underlying tension with some HOA board members because technically I'm not a member. My property predates their association, so under Philippine property law, I don't have to join or follow their rules. The previous HOA president was reasonable about it. She understood the situation and never gave me any trouble. Then about 18 months ago, they elected a new president. Let's call her Karen because honestly, she was the living embodiment of every HOA horror story you've ever heard. Karen lived in one of the houses that faced our property, so she had a perfect view of our pool area. She had moved into the subdivision about 2 years earlier and had been pushing to get on the board almost immediately. Within her first month as president, she started her campaign against me, but it began subtly. It started with passive-aggressive comments. She would walk by when we were having a pool party and make loud remarks to whoever she was with about noise levels and property maintenance standards. Then she started lingering near my gate during gatherings, pretending to walk her dog, but clearly she was trying to find something to complain about. After about 6 weeks of this behavior, I got my first official notice. Karen knocked on my gate on a Monday morning with this printed document that looked like it came from a lawyer's office. "You need to review the subdivision guidelines," she announced, handing me the paper through the gate bars. I looked at the notice. It was addressed to me personally and listed several violations, including excessive noise during evening hours and failure to register social gatherings with the HOA office. "Karen, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not part of your HOA," I told her politely. "My property predates your association, so your guidelines don't apply to me." Her expression hardened. "Everyone in Douchebags United follows subdivision rules, no exceptions." "Check your own membership documents," I said. "My lot number is not even listed anywhere because we were never part of the original development." She snatched the paper back with a dismissive wave. "We will see about that. The board does not recognize your special status." Over the next few months, Karen systematically escalated her harassment campaign against me. She filed noise complaints with the barangay office, a small local government office, claiming our weekend gatherings violated local ordinances. She called the police twice during simple, normal pool parties, insisting we were disturbing the peace with groups of adults swimming and grilling at 7 PM on Saturday evenings. Each time officials showed up, I had to patiently explain that I was not subject to HOA rules and that our gatherings were well within legal limits for private property, and the barangay captain got tired of Karen's complaints pretty quickly, especially after the second police visit where the officers found about 12 people quietly eating barbecue and then told Karen that she was wasting their time. But Karen was not deterred. She started getting creative with her approach. She convinced some of the more uptight residents to actually file formal complaints about everything she could think of. Things like unauthorized parking, which became her favorite, even though my guests were parking on my own driveway and along my own property line. She then complained about our outdoor cooking setup being a fire hazard, despite the fact that half the subdivision had similar setups. The most ridiculous incident happened about 8 months ago. Karen scheduled an emergency HOA meeting in the subdivision's outdoor pavilion, which sits right next to my property line during one of our regular Saturday evening pool parties. She then spent the entire meeting talking loudly about so-called noise violations and non-compliant residents while pointing towards my house. When I walked over to ask what the emergency was, she stood up and declared, "This is exactly the kind of disruption we are trying to address. Karen, you scheduled a meeting right next to my property during a time when you know I have friends over." I said, "If you're concerned about noise, maybe don't hold HOA business in your outdoor pavilion. We have every right to use HOA facilities whenever necessary," she shot back. "And I have every right to use my own pool on my own property," I replied, and that is when she made her first real threat against me. "Not if you're violating community standards, you don't." But the breaking point came about 4 months ago. I was hosting a birthday party for one of my long-term friends, maybe 20 people total, all adults, music at reasonable volume, everyone being respectful. We were grilling, swimming, and just having a great time. Around 7 p.m., Karen showed up at my gate with 2 security guards and this absolutely ridiculous official-looking document. It said, "By order of the Douchebags United HOA Board of Directors," she read from the paper with obvious satisfaction, "you are hereby fined 15,000 pesos. $250 roughly, for operating an unlicensed commercial swimming facility and hosting unauthorized public gatherings in violation of subdivision covenants." I stared at her for a moment and then started laughing. I just couldn't help it. Commercial swimming facility? Karen, it's just my backyard pool. "You regularly host large groups and provide food service," she said, gesturing towards our grilling setup. "That constitutes commercial activity. These are my friends. I'm not charging anyone anything. Prove it," she demanded with this smug expression. "Show me financial records that demonstrate you're not collecting fees for pool access and catering services." The logic was absolutely insane. She wanted me to somehow document that I was not charging money for something I'd never charged money for. "Karen, this is getting completely out of hand," I said, trying to stay calm. "I've told you repeatedly, I'm not part of your HOA and you have zero authority over my property or what I do on it." "Wrong," she said, pulling out another document. "The board voted last month. All properties within Douchebags United boundaries are subject to HOA governance, including yours. You got 30 days to pay this fine and submit an application to regulate your pool activities, or else we will pursue legal action for non-compliance." That is when I lost my patience a bit. Let me make this crystal clear, Karen. I am not now, nor have I ever been, a member of your HOA. My property predates your subdivision by like 20 years, so you have absolutely no legal authority over me, my pool, or anything else on my land. She stepped closer to the gate, clearly enjoying this confrontation. "We will see what our lawyer thinks about that. 30 days. After she left with her security guards, I sat by the pool, thinking about the whole situation while my friends tried to cheer me up. Karen had been making my life miserable for over a year at this point, filing false complaints, wasting government officials' time, and now she was threatening legal action over something completely outside her authority. And yeah, guys, if you would have been in this spot that OP is in, what would you have done? I mean, this Karen is literally harassing him almost 24/7, and she is taking it really way too far. Would you have gone to the police or maybe even filed a lawsuit or something? Let me know in the comments. But as I was sitting there stewing about her behavior and watching the party wind down, I realized something that made me smile for the first time that evening. Karen's HOA might not have any power over my pool, but I definitely had power over something they desperately needed. That convenient service road that ran along my property line, the one that made the entire subdivision's maintenance and delivery schedule work smoothly. Well, my family had been letting them use it out of pure neighborly goodness for over a decade. There was no formal agreement, no legal easement, nothing requiring me to allow access. The next morning I decided to do some research and I pulled out all the old property documents my parents had given me and and spent some time reviewing the history. Well, sure enough, when the subdivision was built, the developers had asked permission to use our property line for rear access, but it was entirely voluntary. A so-called handshake deal based on good neighborly relations. I also did some more reading on Philippine property law regarding easements and access rights, and it turned out that years of informal usage does not automatically create legal rights for the users, especially when the property owner never granted a formal easement to them. Then I took a walk around the subdivision to really understand how the service road worked. Monday was garbage day, so I watched the big trucks make their rounds. They would enter through the front gate, collect from the front section houses using the regular streets, and then swing around to my property line to access the back section efficiently. Without that rear route, they would have to navigate through the narrow residential streets to reach those back houses, squeezing between parked cars and potentially damaging the landscape median strips the HOA was so proud of. I saw the same pattern with other service vehicles throughout the week. The pool maintenance company's truck loaded with chemicals and cleaning equipment used my property line to reach about 15 houses in the back section. Landscaping crews brought their trailers full of equipment along the same route, and delivery trucks used it to avoid the tight turns and narrow clearances of the internal subdivision streets. All of this access was making everyone's life easier and keeping costs down for residents. And all of it was happening because my family had been generous for years, asking for nothing in return. I waited to see if Karen would actually follow through with her legal threat. I was not worried about it since I knew she had no case, but I wanted to see how far she would push this ridiculous situation. And well, exactly 30 days after her ultimatum, she showed up at my gate again, this time with a different official-looking document and that same smug expression. "Since you have refused to comply with HOA regulations and pay your fines," she announced, clearly enjoying herself, "the board has voted to pursue legal action against you for violation of subdivision covenants and disruption of community standards. You will be hearing from our attorney within the week." "Interesting," I said. "I've been thinking about what you said regarding HOA authority and property boundaries." She looked pleased, probably thinking I was about to cave under her pressure. "You are absolutely right that everyone should follow proper procedures when it comes to property usage and respect established boundaries," I continued, "which is why I have decided to formalize the situation with the service road." Her confident expression faltered slightly. "What service road?" I pointed to the area behind my house, where trucks had been driving along my property line for years. "That service road. The one your garbage trucks, pool maintenance crews, landscapers and delivery vehicles use to access the back section of your subdivision." She suddenly looked confused and a bit nervous. "That is subdivision infrastructure." "Well, actually it is not," I said, pulling out the property survey I had done the previous week. "That entire route runs along my property line and has been my family's land for decades. We've been letting HOA contractors use it as a courtesy, but there's never been any formal agreement or easement." Her face started changing color as the implications hit her. "You cannot block access to our subdivision." "I'm not blocking access to anything," I explained calmly. "Your subdivision has perfectly good streets throughout. Your contractors can use the front entrance and navigate through your residential roads just like any other visitor." "Those streets are too narrow for garbage trucks." "That sounds like a subdivision planning issue that your developer should have considered before building around someone else's property," I said with a shrug. She was getting flustered now, her voice rising. "You cannot just cut off road access." "Karen, I thought you would really appreciate this," I said, unable to keep the smile out of my voice. "You have literally spent the last year and a half telling me that everyone needs to follow proper procedures and respect property boundaries and subdivision rules, so I'm just making sure the service road situation complies with your high standards for rule following." "This is completely different." "How so? You said everyone needs to respect the established rules and boundaries." "I'm just making sure my property boundaries are respected according to proper legal procedures." The next morning I drove to the hardware store and bought materials for a simple gate system. Nothing too dramatic or aggressive, just a clear barrier that would mark my property line and control access to the service route. I had it installed by that afternoon. The sign I put up was just straightforward. It said "Private property, service access by permission only. Contact property owner for authorization." The reaction was immediate and even more dramatic than I had expected. The garbage truck showed up the next morning at its usual time and found the route blocked. I watched from my kitchen window as the driver got out, looked at the gate, read the sign, and then pulled out his phone. Within 20 minutes, Karen was stomping across the street towards my house. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded before she even reached my gate. "Managing access to my private property," I said calmly. You've been very clear about the importance of following rules and maintaining proper boundaries.
You cannot do this. This will affect the entire subdivision.
The entire subdivision has street access through your front entrance. The garbage company can figure out alternative routes through your perfectly adequate internal road system.
This is vindictive,
she yelled.
You're punishing everyone because of our disagreement.
What disagreement? I asked innocently. You told me very clearly that I just need to follow proper procedures, so this is me following proper procedures for my own property. She then tried a different approach, lowering her voice and attempting to sound reasonable.
Look, the residents depend on that access route.
The residents depend on garbage collection and maintenance services. I corrected her. How those services choose to access your subdivision is between them and your HOA. I'm just making sure my property rights are respected according to the legal standards that you've been insisting on. Over the next few days, the impact became exactly what I'd anticipated, and it was beautiful to watch unfold. The garbage trucks had to enter through the front gate and navigate the narrow subdivision streets to reach the back section houses. The trucks could barely fit between parked cars, and they couldn't reach some houses without backing up and turning around multiple times in tight spaces. Collection that used to take 2 efficient hours now took most of the day, and the garbage company actually started complaining to the HOA office about the difficult route. The pool maintenance company had to bring all their equipment through the residential area, which meant driving over carefully maintained landscaped areas and squeezing between residents' cars. When their contract came up for renewal the following month, they added a surcharge for the difficult access route, passing the extra time and risk costs onto their customers. Landscaping crews couldn't even get their big equipment trailers to the back section houses at all, using the narrow internal streets. They had to unload everything at the front of the subdivision and transport tools and materials by hand to the back section, which they immediately started billing as additional labor time. Delivery companies started refusing to bring large items to houses in the back section, claiming the internal roads were too narrow and the risk of vehicle damage too high. Residents had to either pick up their deliveries at the subdivision entrance or pay extra fees for so-called difficult access delivery. The absolute best part, though, was watching Karen try to manage the flood of resident complaints. She has spent over a year making my life difficult with her power trips and legal threats, and now she was getting angry calls all day from homeowners whose services were disrupted, delayed, or costing significantly more. I heard through my friends in the subdivision that the HOA office had become complete chaos. Karen was fielding complaints from residents demanding to know why their garbage pickup was irregular, why their pool maintenance costs had gone up, and why their landscaping was taking twice as long and costing more, and why furniture appliance deliveries were being refused or charged extra fees. Karen's first strategy was to try blaming me entirely, and she told residents that I was being unreasonable and holding the neighborhood hostage over a so-called minor disagreement about subdivision standards. But that approach backfired when some of the smarter residents started asking questions about what exactly this disagreement involved, and that is when they learned the full story. Karen had been systematically harassing a neighbor who was not even subject to HOA authority, threatening legal action over backyard pool parties, and essentially picking a fight with the person who had been quietly making everyone's life more convenient for over a decade. And by the way, guys, as we all know, no good deed goes unpunished when you are dealing with an HOA. Sometimes being nice really does not pay off, unfortunately. However, the breaking point came about 3 weeks after I had installed the gate. There was an HOA meeting which I could actually hear from my pool area, since they held it in the subdivision's outdoor pavilion. I did not attend, obviously, but my friend who lives 2 houses down filled me in on all the dramatic details later that evening. Karen tried to present the situation as me being completely unreasonable and punishing innocent residents. She actually stood up in front of everyone and said,
"He's holding our community hostage because we asked him to follow basic community standards and pay legitimate fines."
That is when one of the older residents who had been around since the subdivision was first built stood up and set the record straight. He explained that my family had been letting them use the service route as a favor for years, that there was never any legal requirement for us to provide access, and that Karen had been systematically harassing me despite the fact that I was not subject to HOA rules in the first place. Another resident pulled out his phone and showed everyone the math on how much extra money they were all paying for services now. Pool maintenance alone was costing affected households an extra 2,000 to 3,000 pesos per month because of the access difficulties. Then someone asked the question that Karen had been dreading: why exactly were you threatening legal action against someone who doesn't have to follow HOA rules in the first place? Karen's explanation about community standards and property values fell completely flat when people realized she had created this entire expensive mess by going after someone who had been quietly helping the neighborhood function better for years, asking for nothing in return. The meeting ended with a motion to immediately remove Karen from the board for exceeding authority and acting against the interests of subdivision residents. It passed by an overwhelming margin, something like 40 votes to 3. The new HOA president reached out to me the following week, and he was actually one of my neighbors that I'd become friendly with over the years. So in short, a reasonable guy who had attended several of our pool parties already. We met at my outdoor kitchen area, and he was completely straightforward about the situation, saying, "Look, I know Karen was completely out of line with everything she did." He said right away, "What she did was wrong and the entire board owes you a sincere apology. But we also need to figure out a realistic solution for the service access situation. To be honest, the whole subdivision is being affected." And yeah, guys, not gonna lie, I appreciated his direct, honest approach. I never wanted to hurt anyone else, I told him. This was just specifically about Karen's behavior and her threats. She has spent over a year making my life difficult over something that was absolutely none of her business. "I completely understand," he said. And honestly, most of us had no idea what she was doing until this whole mess exploded. If we had known about her harassment campaign, we would have shut it down much earlier. We worked out a solution that actually made sense for everyone involved. So basically, the HOA would pay me a reasonable monthly access fee for formal usage rights to the service route. Nothing too excessive, just enough to cover my increased property insurance costs and maintenance expenses, plus fair compensation for the years of free usage and the formalization of the arrangement. In exchange, I would grant them a proper legal easement agreement that would protect both sides and prevent any future disputes. The agreement specified exactly what types of vehicles could use the route during what hours and included provisions for maintenance responsibilities. The new arrangement actually works much better for everyone. The HOA has guaranteed reliable access for all their contractors and service providers, and I have a formal legal agreement that protects my property rights and provides fair compensation. And there's no more ambiguity or potential for conflict about the situation. Well, Karen meanwhile became a complete social outcast in the subdivision. Word spread quickly about how her harassment campaign and power-hungry behavior had led to increased costs and service disruptions for everyone. She tried to rebuild her reputation by volunteering for various subdivision committees, but nobody wanted to work with her after the service road debacle. She ended up selling her house and moving away about 8 months later. And yeah, guys, personally, what fascinates me the most in this story is not the amazing malicious compliance from OP, which is indeed very satisfying, but it is more the stupidity of the HOA. I mean, this is like a textbook example of why handshake deals for land use can be a ticking time bomb. It's honestly wild that the original developers did not secure a formal legal easement for that service road when they need this road so much. And yeah, OP's parents and he himself were being incredibly generous by letting the contractors use that property line for free for over a decade. So in the end, I would say that the HOA was incredibly lucky to find someone like OP who was willing to sit down after all of this harassment and be reasonable. I think OP was actually way more mature than I would have been in that situation. I would have probably gone scorched earth. Anyway, now let's read some comments from Reddit. The first one said, "Everyone sucks here, but Karen is obviously the main villain. She had no authority over OP and tried to invent HOA jurisdiction out of thin air. However, OP also knew that blocking the service road would hit a lot of residents who had nothing to do with Karen's harassment, meaning innocent people got hit in the process. I get why OP did it, and honestly, Karen created the problem by attacking the person providing free access, but the cleaner move would have been to send the board a formal notice first. OP did the right thing, but he definitely chose the nuclear option." And now let's read another comment from Reddit. This one is especially smart. This person said, "Congratulations, you won a fight with Karen by making the entire neighborhood suffer. Very heroic. The garbage truck drivers, landscapers, delivery guys, pool cleaners, and regular homeowners did not fine you. Karen did. But instead of dealing with her directly, you blocked a road that everyone had relied on for years and then sat there enjoying the chaos while people's services got delayed and more expensive. Was it effective? Sure. Mature? Absolutely not." And yeah, guys, I would say sometimes you don't always need to be mature, especially in situations like this, because I would say OP acted absolutely perfectly. I have zero complaints. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, let me know where you are watching from today. But before I can let you guys go, I will have to read one more malicious compliance story. This one is titled Vacation Management. So I was in my 20s and working as a machine operator in a union shop. I was the only one who could make that machine sing. Others could run it, but kicking out about 40% of what I could. The parts I made were crucial for the end product. So I got 2 weeks of vacation a year, and my foreman was a bit of a dick. I put in for vacation time in the summer, but I got declined. Again at Christmas, I got declined. Then he told me that I had to use all of it by the end of April, or else I would lose it. So I put in 10 requests for 10 Fridays in a row. He had to approve it as the union rep backed me up. So what happens is that if overtime is required on a weekend, the foreman takes the seniority list on a Friday afternoon and goes down the list until he gets enough people to agree to work Saturday. And sure enough, the first Friday I am off, he lines up a handful of people, except for me, since I was not there to be asked. And since I wasn't working Friday, the guy who ran the machine created a small pile of parts. Most of them were used on Friday, and they ran out early on Saturday, which brought production to a halt. On Monday morning, I get there, and there are no parts. I mean, again, the entire production line is stalled until I can kick some parts their way. As soon as I made a batch, there was someone waiting to rush them out to the floor. By Thursday, I had caught up on the backlog and had a small cushion of parts made. And sure enough, Friday rolls around, they run low, and Saturday, they have nothing. The guys who were called in to work OT on Saturday spent the first part of their shift standing around doing nothing. The foreman is getting roasted by now as the production volume is going up and down like a roller coaster. They tried to pin it on me, but the union pointed out that he had denied my vacation and then told me to use it up. So now the foreman is in the grinder, and I heard through the grapevine that he was looking for a way to get rid of me, and then was told that if he did, production would be dead slow all the time. Well, the following summer I put in for vacation, and surprise, surprise, it was approved immediately. I guess he learned his lesson. And yeah guys, there's nothing like doubling down on stupid. I caused this problem, so now I'm going to fire the only guy who can fix it. That always works. When will all these stupid entitled bosses learn their lesson? That is why I love Malicious Compliance. Thank you for watching, please check out my playlist on the left, and I will see you again tomorrow.